this session, we explore step number 3, understanding the external environment faced by the organization. Strategy is all about creating a fit between your organization and the external environment, especially the match between the needs of your customers and the broader markets you serve. Let's begin now by building a shared understanding of the external environment. Our job as strategy professionals is to help our customers look before they leap. Before we begin, let's have a little fun. This is something that has stuck to me since I began LBL Strategies in 1985, and it's a little fable that I'd like to read, one of Aesop's fable. Upon the drying of a lake, 2 frogs were forced to seek water elsewhere. As they searched, they came upon a deep well. "Come," said one frog to the other, "let's go in without looking any further." Said the companion, "You believe this fine, but what if the water should fail us here too? How shall we get out again?" Obviously, the moral to this story, 'tis good advice to look before you leap. And that's what environmental assessment's all about, and that's what we'll cover in this session. Let's remind ourselves where we are in the strategic management process. We've moved from phase 1, assessing the situation, organizing the work plan and the team, and now we're beginning the environmental assessment, beginning with the external scan, the external analysis. The outline for step 3 will begin by taking a look at conducting an external strategic analysis. We'll have some case study information for you. We'll have a couple tools that hopefully will be helpful to facilitate this. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the ASP Body of Knowledge Guide. The learning objectives for step 3. By the end of this module, you'll be able to define environmental assessment, define what we mean by external factors, explain the rationale for conducting an assessment of the external environment, identify factor categories that you need to assess to have a good feel for the environment, and then be able to construct an environmental assessment of the external environment. Now let me differentiate between analysis and evaluation. Together they make up this notion of assessment. So, in sessions 3, 4, and 5, we're going to be looking more analytically. We're going to collect data and process that data and turn it into information that can be used. In session number 6, we'll evaluate the data and information we've collected and compare it to some objective criteria to facilitate decision making. So again, assessment, it equals analysis plus evaluation. Step 3, analyzing external strategic information. 4 main thoughts here that I want you to kind of have in mind from the beginning as we move into this material. We need to look at the macro level trends driving the strategic environment for the organization. Similarly, we need to look at more micro level trends, the industry level trends. Together, they give us plenty of hints in terms of how we should position ourselves. Always, 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 we need to take a careful look at our competition. Due diligence is required here. Even if we're in a blue ocean strategy situation, and I'll talk more about that as we get into the course, even then we need to look at both direct and indirect competitors. Maybe direct competitors are just not there in a kind of a blue ocean space, but indirect competition, understanding, thinking about our competition, our competitive advantage, what it is that differentiates us. And lastly, and probably as important, or if not more important than any of the others, is really having a clear understanding of the needs, the wants, and the expectations of our primary customers, our secondary customers, any key stakeholders who have a vested interest in our success or failure. It's vitally important to understand all that before strategy is formulated. When conducting an environmental analysis, or sometimes referred to as an environmental scan, an external scan, there are a number of variables that we want to take into careful consideration. As I mentioned, some are more macro level. Sociocultural. We all see the demographic changes that are occurring here and in other parts of the world. Environmental. Climate change is real. It's impacting all of us, and it will for many, many years, even if we stop polluting the environment with carbon. We are still going to be faced, all of us, in every day, in every way, the forces of global climate change, and it's just real. Technology. We all see how technology is impacting the world. What are the trends there? The economy. Any of us that have been living through this in a business situation since 2008 have got a very good dose of information and experience about how the economy works or doesn't work and the impact it has on our day-to-day business lives. So understanding where the economy is going. Political and legal regulatory forces, whether it be domestically or internationally. Here in the United States, we've seen political gridlock. In other parts of the world, there have been other challenges. But clearly, these factors impact all of us, and we need to stop, again, look before we leap, think about these forces and how they are going to impact us, not only how they are impacting us now, but how they're likely to impact us in the future. Secondly, we need to look at the microenvironment. And as I mentioned, this is more the industry environment and who all of our key stakeholders are. What are the trends that are occurring within the industry, whether it's related to our customers or related to competition? Understanding those forces and how they likely impact on our organization is at the heart of doing an external analysis. There are some tools that you can use to look at competitors. One is Michael Porter's 5 Forces, understanding the forces that drive industry competition. This work was done in 1980, and it's fundamental to the tool set of any strategy professional. Another very effective tool is the strategy canvas. This comes from the work of Kim and Marlborough and Blue Ocean Strategy. Understanding what the competitive factors are in a particular industry, plotting the profile of, in this case, we're looking at yellowtail wine, plotting the profile of more expensive wines versus less expensive wines. And then ultimately, the strategy canvas can also be used for strategy setting in terms of defining what we're going to do less of, more of, and how we're going to create a blue ocean for those of you that are thinking about that type of strategy. The work of Kim and Marlborough, it would be very helpful for you here. But again, can begin by looking at just the competitive environment. Another example of that is the industry value curve. Here we're looking at the U.S. Airline industry, and we can see the industry value curve, what the points we compete on along the bottom, whether there's a high or low emphasis. And we can generally see that the industry value curve is toward the higher end on most all these factors. Well, then Southwest Airlines came along and said, no, we're going to look at things differently. So first they plotted the value curve, then they decided how they were going to compete, and then use this as both as an analysis tool and as a strategy tool. Most importantly, and I want to emphasize this, of all the slides I've talked about, this is the one that's the most important. Assessing the current and potential customers, understanding the market, understanding who your primary customers are, who your secondary customers are, who the key stakeholders are, understanding from each of them what are their needs, their wants, their expectations. There's many ways about going out and collecting this information. Certainly surveys are one way to do it. Focus groups are another way to do it. One-on-one interviews are an effective way of being able to assess potential. However, they all have pitfalls. Surveys, we run into problems with response rate. Focus groups, they can get expensive. Most of us don't know how to run focus groups effectively and efficiently, so quite an investment can be made there. Individual interviews, that is the most expensive, flying around the country doing interviews. So there are 3 primary ways to do this. and they each have their problems. So what we've learned over the years from the survey research folks is to do a little of each of these whenever we get a chance. We have an opportunity to interview customers. Let's take that opportunity. We're at a meeting where we can run a focus group. Well, let's get someone who knows how to do it and probe and collect some of this information. And surveys. Certainly surveys have their place in being able to do an assessment. Now with technology and moving towards a situation where every customer has unique wants, expectations, the role technology can play in terms of tracking buying behavior and clicks and that sort of thing to really understand what your customers are looking for so that we can create a unique experience for them is part of what's happening in the marketplace today. So that's an overview of doing an external analysis. I want you to remember my little friend Leap here. He's the guy that was on the front of that bicycle I just showed you. This is a picture of a frog I took in Costa Rica many years ago. But the notion is the same. We need to have our eyes open, our ears open. We need to be listening. We need to be learning about what the external environment is telling us before we move forward with deciding where, in fact, we want to formulate strategy and put together action plans. We have a couple tools for you today for step 3. The first is just a little template to help you collect information about how to approach identifying the sources, finding the sources of where this information is available. And then we've also provided separately some external environmental questions and categories that you may want to consider. Both of these you should be able to adapt to your situation fairly easily. And then lastly today, looking at the Body of Knowledge Guide, in the content section on pages 43 to 45, there's some new expanded content on theories and models. And then on 45 and 46, you'll find expanded content in terms of tools you can use related to analyzing the environment. In the process section, there's some brand new content on metacognition on pages 46 and 47, and then some new and expanded content on pages 47 to 55 on external assessment. With a shared understanding of the trends and expectations coming from the marketplace, the team is now positioned to discuss where best to focus their efforts. Next up, step 4, analyze the internal factors impacting the organization.